Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy Friday. We're just going to give it a minute to let everyone in our Intentional Conversations VodCast community get in and get settled. Welcome, welcome. It is such a joy to be here with you on Friday morning. We have a great discussion for you today. I'm very excited for our time today. Good morning and welcome, everyone. Welcome. Let's get started. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Intentional Conversations VodCast. I am so happy to be here with you today. We at NWC are grateful for your presence. We are humbled that you have chosen to spend your valuable time with us. My name is Cosette Strong. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as the Senior Director of DEI Learning Strategy and Design here at NWC. You have joined the Intentional Conversations VodCast, where we intersect discussions regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging with leadership and business. If you feel comfortable, please take to the chat. Let us know where you're located today. I'm coming to you, as always, from Columbus, Ohio, and I enjoy knowing that even though we may literally be across the world from each other, we can convene in this space together from wherever we sit. Feel free also in the chat to share something about yourself, maybe your LinkedIn profile or the organization you're representing, so we can become even closer connected. It's wonderful for me to be here with you today. All right, everybody ready? Let's get to it. Sit back, relax, and let's get ready for another Intentional Conversations VodCast. Yay! I love our theme song. Welcome again for those just joining us. My name is Cosette Strong. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I serve as the Senior Director of DEI Learning Strategy and Design here at NWC. This podcast is supported by an incredible team of purpose-driven, passionate professionals. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge their presence, their hard work behind the scenes to curate this experience for you. All right, June, we're almost done with June, but June is Pride Month, and I personally celebrate Pride Month all year. This is one of my favorite months of the year for many reasons. Pride Month began in 1969 in Lower Manhattan in New York City with the Stonewall riots, a series of riots for gay liberation that went on for several days. And then the next year in 1970 in June, the first Pride marches were held in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. And each year around the world, people celebrate the LGBTQIA+ community during Pride. June, you may know, is also Immigrant Heritage Month. This month started in 2014 and is an occasion to acknowledge the achievements and contributions that immigrants make to our economy, our culture, and our way of life. All right, now available. You've heard about this. Dr. Nika White's book, Inclusion Uncomplicated, is available wherever books are sold. So if you don't have a copy yet, get yours today. And speaking of Inclusion Uncomplicated, Unravel the Knot, an Inclusion Uncomplicated learning experience, is available to bring to your organization. Contact us today to learn more about this impactful learning experience and how you can bring it to where you sit. Great news, the NWC LinkedIn Learning course is now live. If you are on LinkedIn, and even if you're not, check it out. We would love to know what you think. And we have some great programming for you coming up in July. Be sure to tune in to Intentional Conversations VodCast on July 7th, when we welcome Dr. Shauna Payne Gold. We will discuss moving from diversity to representation, necessary skills for DEI professions that aren't often discussed, and we'll also talk about change management and resistance to the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then the week after, on the 14th, Jessica Farm will join us. We'll discuss Black professionals in the workplace. We'll discuss how to navigate minefields, how to advocate for yourself, and manage relationships. And we welcome your input. We are looking for co-hosts for Q4. And so if you have someone you think would be a great guest co-host, please let us know. We're booking now, so reach out to Amora if you have someone in mind, or if you even want to recommend yourself as a guest co-host on Intentional Conversations VodCast. Finally, I'm so excited to welcome today's co-host, Netta Jenkins. First, as is our custom, I will read Netta's bio, and then I will ask for a personal greeting. You know what to do, IC VodCast community. Get your emojis, your virtual applause ready. Let's greet our co-host. Netta Jenkins is CEO of Aerodi, a gamified platform for organizations that ignite DEI efforts by measuring the impact of every employee, and offers real-time demographic data. We're all about the data. Aerodi's platform organically enhances representation, retention, growth, and engagement. Netta is a doctoral student focused on quality systems and management, as well as an author of The Inclusive Organization, listed by Forbes as one of the top 4 DEI books to read. Netta has been advising corporations and audiences of all kinds for more than 15 years on the most effective strategies to address inequitable gaps that led to a 300K plus LinkedIn audience, and played a key factor in Forbes naming her as one of the top 7 anti-racism educators in the world. She has also given a groundbreaking TEDx talk called Reimagining the Workplace. So y'all know what to do if you haven't already. Let's welcome Netta. Hi, Netta. I would love for you to welcome and greet our IC VodCast audience in your own way.
Yes, well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you all. Again, my name is Netta Jenkins, and I'm really excited to be here. I often like to start off with how I even got into the DEI space, and it is Immigrant Heritage Month. Both of my parents are actually from Liberia, and they came to the US in the 80s. And I grew up in the suburbs. So it was a predominantly white neighborhood. We experienced a lot of racism. And there was one specific incident when I was 7 years old that really changed the trajectory of my career and what I do today. And that was after, standing in the yard with my mother and a white woman spitting in her face and saying, "Blacks don't belong in my neighborhood." And I remember feeling my mother's energy and her thinking. I could feel her thinking, well, what do I do? How do I react? Should I do something, right? Or should I just turn around and walk away? And the decision she made that day was to turn around and walk away. And we both went in the house and we did not unpack it. But I remember going into my room and vowing to never be silent again. Wow. And that is what has truly propelled me to advocate for people, voices that have been silenced for so long. And that started off in school, and it's emerged within the workplace as well. So, really excited for this conversation today.
What a powerful introduction. As you were talking, I was thinking about, some of my childhood memories as well, and some of the things that stick with you and that you carry with you into adulthood, and these things propel you forward and really embed in you and make you who you are. So, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it keeps you grounded, right? It keeps you grounded.
It does keep you grounded. That is a
great
perspective. Right. Wow. Yeah. I have a question. You said at that time when you and your mom went back into the house, you never unpacked it. Did you ever unpack it? Have you ever?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We unpack it all day long now. But within that specific moment, that day, that night, we did not unpack it. I think it was the sheer shock. And also as a child, right? Like that was my first overt experience to seeing the world in a total different light.
Yeah.
And so as a 7-year-old child, like, how do you even go about unpacking that? I was really trying to process and make sense of it. I was trying to process my emotions. I was
Yeah.
also trying to process, well, why didn't I do anything? What level of fear did I have? Did I
Mhm.
know something that I didn't even know subconsciously?
Yeah.
Right. So there were all of these thoughts that thankfully throughout the years, I've been able to unpack, I've been able to heal by them, but I find the real healing is through doing this work. It's
Yeah.
through listening to folks' stories. It's through creating tools, right, that can scale inclusion throughout organizations, that can provide the psychological safety for folks within organizations, no matter what your background experience is. So like that has been really, really important for me. And I've always been about, well, how can I see the results? And how can others see the results of their impact, right? So
Yeah, I love that. What you said, it keeps you grounded. It sticks with you, and it, propels you to be the person you are today. And, speaking of, how does the data drive the experience? What type of story do I want to tell? And I'd really love to talk about your organization, Aerody. Why? Tell me more about that, and why was it important for you to start this platform?
yeah, I'll start off with that, why it was so important. It's, with close to 300,000 followers on LinkedIn, um, I receive so many messages per day. And
Mm,
folks would ask, well, Netta, what is the future of DEI? Or folks would say, hey, here's my experience within the workplace. It's either negative or positive. And if it's negative, Netta, what do I do in this situation? I would
right.
also have organizations say, hey, Netta, we want to take action, but we just don't know how. We don't know how to do it properly. We're not seeing the results of our impact.
Yeah.
And then I would also talk to leaders, and I would ask leaders, well, what does DEI mean to you? Or what does it mean in general? And I
Mhm.
would hear folks simply say, well, it's about race and gender. And those are core components, but
Sure.
DEI is much more expansive than that. So
Right.
I said, okay, let me go back to the table and let me whip up something, right? And I started to create this prototype, and I tested it with a 500-person organization, and also with leaders. And my background's in behavioral psychology as well. So I really wanted to think about, well, as human beings, how do we start to create positive behaviors, right? How do we create behaviors and patterns just in general? And then I started to think about how I sleep with my phone right next to me. Why do I do that? Right? Many of
Yeah.
us do that. It's not healthy. It's not
Right.
good. That's the first thing that I'm touching in the morning to look at, even before I say hello to my kids. Like, why is that happening? The
Yeah.
behavior that I've started to create, it's not a great one, right? But then I also started to think about the gamification element. As
Hmm.
human beings, we like to have fun, right? We want to have fun. So why can't we have fun and drive impact at the same time? And
Mhm.
really, Aerodie was birthed out of that. And it was me thinking about, how do we begin to democratize DEI within an organization, within every organization, no matter what industry, and also ensure that every single employee is able to work on a goal, right? That they can see the impact of at the end in real
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
And that leaders can then go in and say, oh my goodness, I know exactly what my organization is doing. So it's not just about demographic data, because that's one aspect of it. But if people aren't moving up and advancing within an organization, or they don't have that psychological safety,
Yeah.
then it's not right. Like, what's the benefit of that? Just to say, oh yeah, we have representation, but people are not happy.
Right. Right.
um, so Aerodie is, in a nutshell, a gamified tool that really helps to democratize DEI across an organization, and really add value. And organizations that are early adopters right now are just saying, oh my goodness, Netta, this is the future of DEI. We
Mm.
can actually see what's happening. Or
Right.
employees are saying, I actually saw the results of my impact. And I'm excited about that. And
Yeah.
I'm building the muscle to now apply the same energy and do the same thing and share with others. We have a feature within Aerodie called goal group sharing. And really what that is let's say you're in one part of the business. So I'm in product and you're in engineering and we don't know each other at all, but we're
Okay.
actually working on the same goal within the platform. Well, we're going to
Okay.
say to each other, let's connect.
Yeah.
Let's complete this goal together and faster. And that's exactly what many people were doing, especially when I was, testing out the prototype. So I think the energy around it, the impact around the platform, and really allowing for organizations as well to see from a very granular standpoint, the impact that's happening within their organization is really critical.
Wow. That is so exciting, being able to measure your own impact. We talk about that in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space all the time, especially organizations. We want to know how to measure our efforts. Is
Yeah,
anything actually changing? Are we moving the needle? And so
yeah, yeah,
this is so powerful, and probably why Erudite is described as the future of transforming organizations. I mean, I truly feel that, and hearing you describe it solidifies that for me. When we think about the current state of DEI,
yeah.
and we know, the Supreme Court yesterday
Right.
just, ended this affirmative action. We're seeing what I have been calling a war on DEI and DEI
Mhm.
efforts.
Mhm.
Why do you feel like we needed a new approach?
Yeah. I mean, it's critical, right? Because I think for a very long time, DEI leaders, HR leaders that are tackling this work within their organizations, it's simply them that's doing it. It's
Yeah,
them or the ERG. And
right,
it's so unfair, right? But also what happens is then everyone else within an organization then questions the work because they're not working on it, right? And if you're not seeing an output, people are going to start blaming, right? Narratives are going to start to
right.
take shape as well. And that's what we see happening politically. And we also are seeing the lack of um, people within organizations standing up, especially leaders saying, hey, here's why we stand for DEI. Here's how we're driving these efforts, and here's the impact. And that is the gap, right? And so that's how come when I think about Erudite and I bring it up again, I think about it and I'm so excited about it, especially within this political climate, because it's now time for organizations to truly know what's happening, to also have a layer of accountability implemented so that every single employee is working on these efforts. And
Yeah,
again, the narrative of it just being, oh, this is just about one demographic or this only supports one group is so
right.
wrong,
It is.
right? And
Yeah.
until people start to see, because when I think about DEI, I'm thinking about retention, I'm
Mhm.
thinking about representation, I'm thinking about psychological safety, I'm thinking about so many different components, right? There's so many layers to it. And so as organizational leaders start to say, okay, well, we as an organization want to focus on retention. We simply just want to focus on retaining talent because we had to lay off so many people
Yeah.
and we're not hiring right now, right? That's okay, but let's bake that into small, granular responsibilities so that everyone within the organization now can work on that. And
Mhm.
I think that's when we're really going to see true transformation. We're going to see this narrative shut down as well. The other thing, I keep on saying, I spoke at a pretty large gala couple of days ago, right? Oh my goodness, I'm like blanking out here. What was it? Just the other day. What day are we on? It was yesterday. Wow. So I spoke, and there was probably about 300 plus communication and PR leaders. And one of the things that I said to them is, do y'all understand the power that you hold? There is a narrative that's taking place right now, and all that I see is also a narrative of, oh my goodness, DEI is being attacked. But I would love to see communication leaders and PR folks saying, here are leaders, CEOs of some of the biggest, largest institutions in the world that have employees all over the world. Here's what they have to say about DEI and why they value it. Here are the organizations, or here's what they're pulling away from due to this narrative as well. Like, can you imagine if we all started to see all of these videos of leaders speaking about the impact, the narrative, the political narrative that we see will be behind.
I agree.
But we're not seeing that. And so, my call to action for those leaders within the room, the communication PR leaders, was like, let's reshape and reshift this narrative that's being painted. Because DEI, what DEI solves for is to remove barriers so that people can advance.
Right.
Why wouldn't we as human beings want any individual, I don't care who you are, to simply equitably advance? Like, make it make sense.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be, as a human being, for us to not want someone to simply equitably advance, you have to have some serious issues.
That's
with
right.
yourself,
with
right?
yourself. Exactly.
With yourself.
With yourself. Yeah.
I always like to be very, very clear about like defining that with leaders and with employees, but again, with a gamified tool that really excites people to utilize it, kind of similar to how I'm always on my phone. And you're looking for your points, but at the same time, you're driving impact. And all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I drove so much impact. I can do this. It's now a behavior and a pattern. Folks are not being lectured to, right? Saying, hey, I'm blaming you for this, or you haven't done that. It's no, I'm actually doing.
Yeah. It is. We say this all the time at NWC. We say that the work of DEI is for all of us. It's not just the DEI practitioner who's on staff doing it all themselves. It's not just for those of us you may see putting thought leadership out on LinkedIn. It's not just for those people who are the CDOs of organizations. Even it is for all of us. And in your book,
all of us,
you talk about ways to be an actionist, and you speak specifically about closing the racial wealth gap through being an actionist. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because that term actionist, I don't know that I've heard that and quite used in that way.
Yeah, it's a new term I created within my book. And the way that I describe an actionist is someone specifically, when you're working to advocate, you want to see an impact. You want to see a clear result at the end of the day. So a very simple example would be, let's say you're at a director level and you're within an organization and you're on the same team as me. And I see how hard you work. I see that you're being shut down within meetings. I see all of these things that exist, right, for you in those troubling dynamics. But I also know that you want to move up, right? You want to continue to move, but your career is being capped. As actionist, I'm going to take it upon myself to say, okay, I am going to not only advocate for you, but I'm going to help to see that you are going to be at a senior director level and that you are heard within every single meeting, right? And so within a meeting, the way that may look, if you're being talked over, then I'm going to say, hey, I just heard what Cosette said or mentioned. I want to bring that back because what she mentioned was so powerful. Could you say that again? I redirect that conversation straight to you. And you can be at any level to do that. Right? I also could be on the same team as you. And let's say you're a higher level than I am. And I can reach out to our manager and say, you know what? Nope, Cosette is amazing. Here's how she is driving impact every single day. Here's what I see. Here are the things that she's working on that I know about. I would love to see her at a senior director level, right? And then, so I'm doing all that advocacy, but at the end of the day, what I want to see is that you're actually in that role. And eventually you get there. And I'm able to say, okay, I was able to support. And that's what true being an actionist is about. You want to see a clear impact, not an ally. An ally is, yeah, oh, I'm with you. Oh, of course, that, yeah, I see that in that meeting, folks were talking over you, but are you okay?
Mhm.
That's an out that could, that's what I typically see allies do, come after the fact.
Mhm. Yeah.
I stand with you. I'm so sorry you went through that, but are you okay after the fact? And action is no. You're tackling that issue right at hand, and you're looking for a clear result and impact.
I love that. You're talking about creating visibility for other people. You're talking about amplifying voices and doing that in a direct way. So often I think that we feel like leaders should be the people who do that. You're a leader. This is something that you should do. And I think a lot of times with DEI, that's maybe one of the reasons people don't feel like the work belongs to them. Because they're
Yeah.
like, well, I'm just an individual contributor, or I'm just, a lowly associate. I'm looking to the manager, the director, the senior manager, the senior director to do that work. And I agree with you. It does belong to all of us. And I'm curious how the data factors in, because you talk specifically in your book about leaders and those who work in leadership, and how one of their primary focus areas should be measuring demographic data, and the tool you developed helps with that. Can you give us a little bit of insight there?
Yeah. So there's a lot of data points that that leaders should be measuring, and throughout the application that's embedded there. But taking one small feature, the self-ID feature, the demographic data, it's really key that leaders are able to see, and even employees are able to see the intersectional demographic. So for a very long time, when organizations put out, how they're doing from a demographic perspective, it's always kind of one-sided, right? Or we see the
Yeah.
two or more races, and then we're just like, well, what does that really solve for? Like, who was that, right? Do you even know the compilation of that population that exists? And so with Aerodi, we have advanced options. So are you a caregiver? What type of caregiver are you, right? Are you caring for a pet? Are you caring for children? Are you a single parent, right? So it really breaks it down, because really it's not for an organization to just simply boast about having representation. It's for an organization to take a look at their demographic and say, okay, here's what we know. We have 40% of the people within our organization that identify as transgender. What type of benefit package do we have for this population?
Mhm.
Right? We have a population of people that are Middle Eastern, right? That are caregivers. What do we have for that population? So it's really about breaking it, not boasting, but breaking it down to shape policies and benefits for populations of people within organizations that can help them advance, that can remove stress levels for them. And it's those type of advanced features that I think is really, really important when we start to talk about demographic data. Like, how granular are we getting with that? To ensure that we're truly creating an inclusive workplace.
Mhm.
The other data that we have are the KPIs, right? So within the organization, they would work on a number of goals and responsibilities through Aerodi. And of course, those are gamified and all of that, so it makes it really fun and unique. But what also they can pull is, hey, what are those KPIs that are being worked on? So the organization that I tested this in, they have to, they have to submit RFPs. Many organizations have to submit RFPs.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing if you're just submitting demographic data, here's our representation, that's not enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, is your representation actually moving? Do they have opportunities to advance, right? And so with these KPIs, an organization can say, okay, well, we're focused on psychological safety
Mhm.
as an organization. And here are the specific goals that we're working on. Here's the breakdown of what we're working on as well. And again, the organization that I had tested this in, we had to complete an RFP. They ended up winning a $7.7 multi-million RFP.
Wow.
And within the hearing, that organization specifically said, hey, we're moving along with this company due to their DEI efforts. The sole DEI efforts was the platform, right? Because now they could get granular and say, well, this is actually what we're working on. And because we're working specifically on this, and that here's how many people throughout the organization that's working on this, here's the impact of this goal, this KPI, and here's how we increased in representation. Now it's making sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I'm so inspired. One of the things that, has been rattling around my brain space lately is just all of the naysayers about DEI, all of the misinformation that is out there, and thinking through, how to combat that, working smarter and not harder. One of the arguments that I constantly see is how subjective DEI is, how biased DEI is, and it's not supposed to be. And I'm curious to know what you think about that, especially when it comes to the DEI measurement process that you're, talking about. And I can tell that we have some commonality. We love data, and my colleague, Dr. Michelle, on the line as well. She loves data. And so talk to me a little bit about what role subjectivity plays in the DEI measurement process, and how we can reduce subjectivity in DEI.
Yeah. So that was another thing. In thinking about Erudite, it's if folks are working on specific KPIs with granular responsibilities, if they do it or they don't, the system will be able to share that. And now it removes subjectivity, right? Because, like, let's say you have an odd dynamic with your manager. A manager can't say, well, I don't like this. I don't like so-and-so. So they didn't do too well. Sometimes that happens within organizations.
Right.
But with Erudite's tool, now a manager is looking and saying, well, this person completed their goal, their KPI, and here was the impact of their efforts. You can't do anything with that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's in the system, folks can access it. So there's a level of accountability, and it totally removes subjectivity. I think, what can be challenging at times, and you talk a little bit about unconscious bias, is there are a lot of workshops and trainings around unconscious bias. Right. And the thing about that is, as human beings, we can either say, okay, well, I'm going to apply this, or I'm not going to apply this. Right. And that's typically what happens with workshops and trainings, as well-meaning as they'd like to be, right?
Yes.
And so with Erudite, it's a bit different, because people are actually doing, right? They're not being lectured to. They're not being told, well, if you don't do this, here's what's going to happen, but there's no measuring tool to actually highlight that they didn't apply that, right? It becomes like very subjective. So again, I think it's all very, very interesting, but it's really important to have a tool that can highlight and showcase the impact and efforts of what people are doing. So then that can remove that subjectivity and a level of bias as well. And now they understand it, as opposed to being lectured to do something when they're having fun doing it.
Yeah. No one likes to be lectured to, in the history of being told what to do, told to calm down, whatever, it never works. We know that. And so sometimes I think, why are we doing things that it's know it's not going to work? It doesn't, make it make sense. Like,
exactly.
When we talk about unconscious bias, you brought up something really interesting. A lot of times what organizations think will move the needle when they approach, practitioners like you or people like me or others in the space, they're like, I just want an unconscious bias training, and that's just going to solve all my problems. And now, you wave the magic L&D experience wand, and now everything's good in my organization. When we think about actually tackling unconscious bias, because we know that it exists, let's call it what it is. When we think about tackling it, reducing it, eliminating it, Do you think it's possible to do that within an organization?
Uh, it is not possible without an actual tool that can measure the impact of that. Um, it's almost the way that I think about it. It's like if we didn't have if there were no officers on the road to pull us over if we were speeding, right? Like there's no consequences. And so it's one thing to have, unconscious bias training, but if there's nothing that follows up to show how people are applying it and impacting it, then that's one thing. I think the other thing about unconscious bias is it's been played out so much, right? I think it's now time for us to move to the conversation of conscious conscious bias, right? Because it exists. Many people will continue having the same behavior or the same pattern, even when they are told how problematic that is. So I think it's truly a miss for organizations to continue to lean on just unconscious bias and think that that's going to be the sole factor in solving all their issues, because it won't. And in fact, there were some research studies that I came upon, and it showed and started to prove that with unconscious bias trainings, people continue to actually, it's even overly amplified, right? And they continue with those actions because now they feel like it's something that they can lean back on. Well, that was unconscious.
Right.
Well, that was unconscious too.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
And it becomes like their sole excuse for their poor behavior. And so it's really now time that that we're much more direct, especially as it pertains to language. And saying, no, this is conscious behavior, right? If you've done this, you've been told and you've been educated on this already, and you continue to do that, well, now it's conscious.
Right.
Yes,
absolutely. One of the things that I do not like the terms implicit bias or unconscious bias for the exact reasons that you were just sharing, and I prefer to use the term conscious inclusion, because what it does is it flips that narrative on its head. Like you said, you can no longer bow out. You can no longer be let off the hook because you need to lean in. There is action behind it. It's, thinking, acting, deciding with conscious intent to manage, the impact of bias in service of a sense of belonging for everyone. That is the definition. And so, it is challenging for me to continue to hear unconscious bias, implicit bias, because like you said, it's so easy for someone just to surrender, throw up their hands and say, well, I can.
It was unconscious.
Right.
I did it 10 times, but it was unconscious.
And I think about the stress and the toll that this work can take on those of us who are DEI practitioners, especially when we are, kind of coming against dead ends. I like to call it, beating our heads bloody against a brick wall. And so often, there is it's the psychological output of DEI accountability and action that can take a toll on those of us who call ourselves DEI practitioners. Can you talk a little bit about what people can do to ensure that they take care of themselves while doing this important, impactful work?
This work is not easy. It's not easy at all.
And
this is how come I say, even before, there are many people looking to get into the DEI space and consult, right? And I tell folks that before you start consulting, or even before you join an organization, you must ensure that the organization that you're working for or with answers some questions. And it's one, do you have a budget, right? It's two, what are some results that you'd like to see at the end of the day? Three, who am I reporting to and what are those expectations? Four, what's the policy for me to take a break when I need it? Right? Five, do I have a team? right?
Right.
When we start looking at the frustration that exists for DEI leaders, it's also because they're doing it alone. They
Yeah.
don't have they don't have a team of people, right? And that is really unfortunate because organizations are not putting the proper budget aside to
Right.
ensure that these leaders are in the right position.
Mhm.
And so you have to ask yourself those questions before you even get into an organization, or else your psychological safety, your mental state, it's going to be a tough road.
Yeah.
Now, if you're already in it and
Yeah.
you're like, oh Lord, what do I do now? Because I did not ask those questions, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what I'm experiencing,
Mhm.
then it is okay to share with the folks that you're working with that you need to take a break. Or if you're consulting, you need to take a break and truly take that time to reflect on what are the things that are most important to you. I think one of the things that many of us, I think, are now forgetting about is the COVID space that we were
Mhm.
all in, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how we learned how precious family is, how
Yeah.
precious life is, right? And so if you are not ensuring that you're equipping yourself with the space and time, it's going to be very hard for you to pour out into others,
Right.
right? And that's exactly what this work really requires.
Mhm.
Um, but I think also setting expectations for yourself, knowing when you have to say, okay, I no longer can work with this client. That's okay, right? You have to fire that client. It's okay.
Right.
Or I can no longer work at this company that is draining me. It is okay. And I know this part is really hard. And this advice is really hard for me to give, because I understand sometimes we are so tied to our jobs,
Yeah.
because all we're literally looking to do as well is put food on the table for our families or
Right.
support ourselves. And so sometimes when it gets really hard within an organization, you're just like, damn, I want to leave. I want to work up the courage to leave, but I also need the finances
Right.
to sustain and live
Yeah.
that part. And that's how come when I provide advice, I always like to pause and stop there
Yeah.
and recognize it, because there's privilege also in saying, yeah, I can just leave when sometimes you're
Absolutely.
in a tough position. So if you're in that position, then really making sure that you just like take some time to say, okay, I just need to take a break. I need some time off to
Yeah.
reassess. And on your time off, you better start looking for new opportunities.
Right.
Connect with individuals that work at organizations. Do the pre-work before you get
Yeah.
into an organization and start working, because it can take a toll.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This conversation, Netta, is just so powerful and inspiring, and I could hog you all day. But I need to uh ask our vodcast community if they have any questions for you. And invite them to ask them. So I will say that now. If you have questions for Netta, as you see in the chat, please prepare your questions. Be willing to use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Let us know you want to share. We can unmute you, we'll spotlight you, or you can just put your question in the chat and we'll bring that to the conversation. So please keep that in mind. Netta, your book, The Inclusive Organization. I mean, congratulations on that. That is so amazing.
Thank you so much.
What do you want to share with us about the book? How can we formulate an inclusive organization that really understands the needs of its employees, as you've been talking about this whole time?
Yeah. So with this book, what I did is I wanted to make sure that I had worksheets at the end of each chapter, because I really wanted for folks to apply their learnings and also then say, okay, here's how I can take this action within my organization, no matter the level I'm on. So I was very, very intentional about that, intentional inclusion. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect too was I wanted to make sure that I tackled things that organizations are going through. So I have a chapter that talks about impactful layoffs, inclusive, impactful layoffs, right? You never really think of like, how can a layoff be inclusive and
Right, right.
but they can be, right? But like also, how does an organization make sure that they don't have to go through layoffs that
Mhm.
really impact people's lives at the end of the day? How do
Yeah,
you make sure that you don't just hire someone a month ago and then you lay them off after, they've purchased property somewhere because of the
right,
cost of living being lower and them
right.
knowing that you're a remote based organization. So I dive into that. I start off with the behavioral psychology aspect of it. So it's decoding human behavior. Like, who
Mhm.
are we? Why do we react the way that we do? How did we get to this place? I talk about the great divergence as well
Mm,
and what that means.
yeah.
And where do we need to go, but how do we get there? So it's truly practical, but it guides readers every step of the way. And there's some humor in there. I talk about company surveys and more. There's just so much information. So I highly recommend everyone to pick a copy up.
That is exciting. What made you want to write a book? What made you decide to take the leap?
Yeah, it's so interesting because early in my career, I've always wanted to write a book, but it didn't quite happen because I didn't align the purpose to writing a book. It was just like, oh, I want to write a book for the sake of writing a book, right? It wasn't until I really started to tap into my purpose that everything aligned. And I was headed to LA for work. And on that flight, and typically I sleep on flights, but on that flight, there was this sense of urgency that said, you have to write. Like, you have to prepare right now. And so the entire flight, I started to prepare. I wrote every summary of each chapter. I even had the chapter titles.
Wow.
And I was prepared, right? And then 2 weeks later, I received an email from one of the biggest publishing companies in the world, Wiley, asking me, hey, would you be interested in writing a book? And I remember the first time I got that email, I said, nope, that's spam. I literally almost did it. I was like, was Google listening to my thoughts? Because I wasn't talking to anyone. I was just writing. Like, what
No,
happened here? This can't be, right?
right.
Um, and so I'm just like the power of the Lord, right? And manifestation.
Yeah.
But I think what was so important, and I share this with everyone that I talk with, when we believe in something, when we believe that something will come to pass, we must prepare.
Yeah.
There's been many times where I thought I believed, but I never prepared. And
Hmm.
for this particular book, I had prepared for it and it came to pass. And now it's in the hands of people. And the type of responses that I'm receiving from the book and people saying, oh my goodness, I have not even thought of this. Oh my
Mm.
goodness, I can actually implement this at the level that I'm at within my organization, is exactly what I was going for. So it's truly a blessing.
I love that. I love the timing of that. You're on a plane, you normally sleep on flights, you feel this sense of urgency, you
Right.
take out, a pen, paper, your laptop, whatever it is that you're doing, and
Yeah.
you are just writing, preparing for something you didn't even know you're preparing for.
Yeah.
I love that. That's when you know that it is meant to be. That's when you know. Okay, we have a question in the chat from my friend, Dr. Michelle. Uh,
Sure.
Michelle, feel free to raise your hand if you want me to take you off mute and spotlight you, or I can just ask the question on your behalf. So Michelle says, going back to measurement beyond numbers and demographics, what metrics or constructs do you think are the most critical for organizations to track to see if they are on track?
Yeah. So I think about it in a very granular fashion. Um, I think promotions are
Yeah.
incredibly important to track, right? And I think tracking that also by demographic, who's being promoted, what's the tenure, how long does it typically take to what role, right? So if we see there's a specific demographic of people um, that are only promoted to maybe from associate to just a mid-level,
Yeah.
right? Then what's happening there? Why?
Mhm.
Why is that happening? So promotions are definitely critical. I think pay, compensation. is extremely critical as well, right? Who's getting compensated what for what role? What are the disparities that exist there? We have to look at it by demographic as well, right? That's really critical, because when we start to think about the wealth gap that exists and how wide that is, it's because many people also are still being paid significantly low compared to their peers. And so we have to assess that. I also think retention is critical as well, right? It's one thing, like I always say, to have representation, but if people are leaving and you don't know why they're leaving, then that's terrible, right?
Yes.
Organizations are, I think organizations could do a better job of focusing on exit interviews as well.
Agreed.
Right? Why have individuals left? From what demographic, from what population? It can be from any population, but like, let's fix it then. Let's not let it fall by the wayside. And I think oftentimes, when folks leave organizations, it's just like, okay, well, that person left.
Right.
It's okay. We'll focus on the people that are here, but no, like, why did all those people leave? Let's come back here, right? What I do with my children. Like, no, come back here. Let's get to this. So I think those are definitely core things. But when I get granular within the platform, I like to take a look at ERGs, employee resource groups. Like, are those people actually moving up within the organization? Because when you think about it, those are the people that are truly pushing DEI forward. Those are the true influencers within an organization. And so if you're part of a group and you're doing everything you can to help the organization be more inclusive, but they're not looking out for you and you're not advancing, and you still don't know any of the senior level folks, right, that are sponsoring your group, or the executives that are supporting and sponsoring you, then that's a miss. So there has to be an even exchange. And so we have to look at that measurement as well, right? I think we have to look at the measurement of who are the executives that are actually driving this work, right? How often are they talking about it within their teams? How often are they setting meetings just about DEI? Like, that's a pure measurement in itself. Like, if you as a leader, you're not setting up, you're waiting for your DEI leader, HR leader to set up a meeting, a company-wide meeting to talk about DEI, then you've already failed. Like, you've already failed, because I see DEI as a lens that we apply to our work. So if we're applying this lens to our work, then anyone can do it. Right? No one is supposed to be different from this. So there, I can go on and on. There's so many measurement points, and that's what excites me about Erudite as well, because I finally get a chance to meticulously build all of these things into this platform. That will really help, leaders, because, like, let's face it, some leaders just really don't know what to do, and they haven't really been guided as to how to do it correctly. And there's no tool that's measuring. It's just demographic data, which it's like, okay, great, you have this representation, but now what?
Those are some really wonderful examples of how you can operationalize, right? Like the outcomes. You're doing DEI right. And so what does it look like? It doesn't look just like the numbers, but sort of the movement. So I love that. I'm curious about your thoughts, if I can hog you for one more minute. I'm curious about your thoughts in terms of measuring some of the psychological constructs, if that's part of the platform. So, pulse checks around psychological safety or belonging, and whether, I think you're a quantitative person by nature. That was my training too, but I'm curious about your thoughts on qualitative data as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Psychological safety is embedded. So the way that we embed this is we embed the measurements within the actual goals. And it's really dependent on what an organization wants to focus on from an overarching standpoint. And of course, we guide them. What I tell organizations is don't tackle too much, because then you won't be able to truly see the impacts, right? Tackle it at a small pace.
And no ocean boiling.
Yeah, take your time. So with psychological safety, we break that down and we're able to assess and talk to employees. Like, what does that actually mean for the organization? Because I always say, even with this conversation that we're having right now, I can't dictate that all of us are psychologically safe. I could set an environment, right? And I could hope for it, but it's us that dictates if we feel safe. And we dictate that by communicating with each other. So we're able to assess that as well by, are people, are those that are introverts, are they actually speaking up? Do they feel safe enough to speak up, right? Those that are extroverts, are they providing space for people to do that? So we really break it down on a granular level, to really dissect it as we, as it pertains to psychological safety. But excellent question.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. It's been a great conversation. So I'm now going to let other people have you back. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Michelle. I have a question. I don't see any others in the chat, and I'm so mindful of time, but I'm so curious about your perspective when it comes to representation, because we were just talking about this. Representation matters, as we know. And so when we think about organizations and their boards, the leaders that drive the organization forward, when we think about, board representation and making sure that they have the right representation when it comes to gender identity, when it comes to racial identity, how can organizations make sure they're getting it right when it comes to leadership and representation?
Yeah, I think one is they must look within their own organizations. Right? Oftentimes when we start to think about boards, it's almost like a secret society. No one really knows how to get on a board. Like that, we have to start there, right?
Yeah.
So I think boards have to do a better job of saying, okay, one, here's how you even get on a board, and provide the opportunity for employees, especially from marginalized demographics, to learn about how to get on a board. Provide the space to actually build those relationships with folks, with employees within organizations, to learn about, okay, well, what's their background? Are they in the trajectory to move into potentially an executive level role? How can that then translate to being on the board, right? Like there would be so much power in having an employee be able to be a board member, right?
I agree.
Or even someone as an advisory board member learning and then coming on as a full-fledged board member. So I think the knowledge is critical, sharing that, and that's not widely shared. I'm on the advisory board of Betterment, and I learned of that through my former manager, who was like, hey, no one really knows of this. I'm a part of a group, right, of leaders that were sharing this information, but I had to share this with you, and they have to meet you. See how powerful that is. But if I didn't have that relationship with her, senior leader, I would have never known. I would have missed out on that opportunity. So it starts off with even building that relationship. I don't hear of many board members saying like, yeah, we're going into the organization, we're talking to employees. We know of these people that are doing the work and how they want to move within the organization and outside of the organization.
Yeah. I think it's just, another way that bias rears its head. We have in our minds an idea of what a board member looks like, who a board member is. And then we use that to kind of determine, who will be appointed to the board. And of course, that determines the direction of the organization, how resources are allocated, all kinds of things. And I see Maurizio in the chat saying, or have a separate youth board. And those people can be trained to prepare the organization for the future. I know a number of organizations in Philadelphia, especially, where they do that. They have junior board members. And I think that's such a great idea.
And pay them, pay those members, right? Like don't just use them.
It's actual work.
But like, exactly.
Yes.
Compensate them, give them the equity and the stock and all of that any other board member would get.
That's right. That's right. This has been an amazing conversation, and we have 1 minute left. Typically, what we do is, I would love to ask you to, leave us on some type of inspirational note. Let us know something upcoming that you have going on, or just something that you would like to leave us with as we end our vodcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Well, what I will say is, gosh, there's so many things I can talk about. One, definitely get the book, The Inclusive Organization. Like I said, there are worksheets after every single chapter, and it really allows for folks to apply principles and practices throughout the organization, no matter what level they are on.
Mhm.
But even more importantly, advocate for Aerodi to be within your organization.
Yeah.
Reach out to me at aerodi.com and let's set up a demo for
Yeah.
you and your team, or the HR person or DEI leader, because in order for us to truly see this narrative shift, in order for us to see this level of frustration removed from DEI leaders and HR leaders, we must
Yeah.
have a tool that is going to bring everyone along in the process, or else we will continue to do these workshops and these trainings, and it's going to be very difficult for us to truly break through
Yeah.
and show that DEI is simply removing barriers, and DEI is simply a lens that people apply to their work.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much, Netta, for this conversation. Thank you for all of your insights. Thank you for taking your insights and your passion and your purpose and channeling it into things that will actually move the needle and enact sustainable change. This has been an amazing conversation. So thank you. And thank you to our vodcast community for joining us today on this Friday morning. And we will see you next week for another Intentional Conversations vodcast. Thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.